The FBI director doesn't believe undocumented people have rights? Then who else is next? This isn't a misstep. It's a message. When Senator Merkley asked a yes or no question, do undocumented immigrants have constitutional rights? Kash Patel froze. He dodged. He deflected. He refused to say the words. And that silence? That's how democracies start to crack. If the head of the FBI can't say everyone is protected by the Constitution, no one is safe.
Senator Merkley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Director Patel. And so as I understood it, you testified yesterday that you'd like to have another $1 billion added on to the FY25 level to do the additional work you'd like to do on drug interdiction, fentanyl in general, and anti-terrorism. And today you gave us a budget that requests cutting $500 million. Which is it? Do you want us to, what are you asking of this committee? To add funds, add $1 billion, or to cut $500 million?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate the opportunity. What I'm asking for is that with more, I can simply do more. And I was giving examples of what more I could do. I can do the mission and am in support of the budget here. And I'm working with appropriators and you to fill the gaps.
So you support the budget presented that cuts $500 million, but you also support us adding $1 billion should we choose to do that?
Well, I can't not support the budget as proposed because then I would be supporting no budget.
Okay. Well, we've got those two options. We do look forward to further details from you about how you plan to modify the function of FBI on these different missions that you've highlighted today so that we can give it the appropriate consideration. Director Patel, you're familiar with the Fifth Amendment.
Yes, Senator.
And it is really the freedom clause of the United States. It was 4 years into being a nation when Congress and the states said, hey, we have to make sure that there's not an over-aggressive government in the future that deprives us of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And you're familiar that that applies to all persons in the United States.
Yes, Senator.
So there's been a lot of concern about the several hundred immigrants who were swept off the streets of America and sent to El Salvador without due process. And does that concern you?
Senator, I'm not in a position to comment on whether or not they were given or not given due process or are supposed to be afforded due process. All the FBI did and all the FBI will continue to do is arrest those that have violated the law.
Okay, but to arrest, you have to investigate. Have you launched an investigation of this violation of the Freedom Clause of the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, I don't know that I agree with your characterization.
Well, that was my first question, whether or not you agree with the Fifth Amendment and are prepared to defend it. It is your job to investigate crimes.
Yes, I agree with the Fifth Amendment. I agree with the entire Constitution, and the men and women at the FBI decide.
So are you going to launch an investigation of the reported violation of the due process of several hundred individuals?
Again, Senator, it's not for me to call the balls and strikes on it. The men and women at the FBI who are trained to open investigations will make those calls.
So you have no influence over whether an investigation is opened?
I have influence over it, but you're asking me a constitutional question. I'm not a constitutional scholar.
Well, it's actually not it's a question also of law.
But your position is that every one of those individuals is by constitutional right afforded due process. I don't know the answer to that. I'm telling you.
You haven't read the Constitution?
It says all persons. I've got it right here, but what you're saying is that every single one of the illegals that was sent down to El Salvador is supposed to be given due process pursuant.
Yeah, that's what the Constitution says.
It doesn't say that.
It does say no person. Yeah, I'll encourage you to read it because it's also been affirmed by the Supreme Court repeatedly. In the case of Miranda versus Arizona, held the right of all individuals, regardless of citizenship status. The Supreme Court in Reno versus Flores. I mean, but it's the plain language of the Constitution. It concerns me that you're not familiar with the core concept of due process applying to all persons as written in black and white in the Constitution.
As the first public defender who's ever served at the FBI as its director, I am more aware of due process than any predecessor in my seat. You are delineating between removal proceedings and criminal acts. My job is to investigate criminal acts. That's what we do.
You are aware that the Fifth Amendment refers to taking away liberty, and when people are arrested on the street, detained and sent out of the country, that their liberty has been taken away.
Senator, that is a constitutional question that you are asking me to answer. It's not for me to answer.
The question has already been answered by the Supreme Court that they're protected, therefore it's a violation of law, and it's your responsibility to open an investigation, and you're saying today you will not do so?
I am not the agency involved in removal proceedings. That is a different branch of government.
So if an agency other than the FBI violates the law and the Constitution, you will not investigate because it's a different agency?
I will investigate every violation of law.
Well, you have, but you just said you're not investigating.
No. You and I are in disagreement on what is a violation of law. I have yet to hear from the Supreme Court your position as you have adjudicated it.
Well, very, very interesting, because the Supreme Court's been very clear, and I had heard you were trained in the law, so I expected maybe you would try to uphold it. You also took an oath to the Constitution.
Thank you for the reminder.
Well, it's important to remind you, since you're apparently unfamiliar with the very basics of the core protection of freedom in our Constitution.
What I am familiar with is protecting the American public, and that's what
Let me close with one question, Mr. Chairman. Will you make sure that due process in every action of the FBI is completely honored under your time as director?
Will I ensure that due process is followed?
Yes.
Under the Constitution?
Completely. Send that message throughout the FBI that due process must be followed, is constitutionally required. Make sure that it's done under your direction.
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Senator
This
Murkowski.
wasn't a confirmation hearing. This was a test, and the director of the FBI failed it. Because when Senator Jeff Merkley asked Kash Patel the most basic question, do undocumented immigrants have constitutional rights in the United States? Patel didn't answer. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no, he dodged, he stalled, he stared blankly. And that silence, that wasn't accidental. It was a warning. The man now leading the FBI, the most powerful domestic law enforcement agency in the country, refused to affirm that constitutional rights apply to all people on U.S. soil. And that should set off alarm bells for every single American, no matter where you stand politically. Because here's what the law actually says. The Constitution protects persons, not just citizens. That's why even non-citizens, yes, undocumented immigrants, are guaranteed due process, equal protection, and freedom from unlawful search and seizure. It's not a loophole. It's the foundation of civil liberty. But Kash Patel? He wouldn't say that out loud. Now ask yourself, why not? Is it because he doesn't know? That would be disturbing enough. But it's more likely that he knows exactly what he's doing, playing into a dangerous narrative where the law only protects certain people and the rest are at the mercy of the state. And when the FBI director won't commit to the idea that constitutional rights are universal, we've already crossed a line. Let's not forget, Patel has a long record of politicizing intelligence, undermining law enforcement norms, and now, as FBI director, overseeing sweeping surveillance powers with little transparency. And it's no coincidence that he's now echoing the same rhetoric used to justify mass raids, indefinite detention, and the erosion of civil liberties. This isn't about border policy. This is about who is protected under the law and who the government believes it can silence, surveil, or disappear. Senator Merkley asked a straightforward question, and Kash Patel's refusal to answer speaks louder than any speech ever could. If the head of the FBI won't affirm that everyone on U.S. soil has constitutional rights, we need to ask, what else is he willing to ignore? Today, it's undocumented people. Tomorrow, it could be protesters, journalists, you. This is bigger than one man. This is about whether our government still recognizes everyone's humanity under the law. So if you believe rights don't depend on your passport, but your presence, then make sure people see this. Share this video, leave a comment, and most importantly, stay loud. They're counting on our silence. Let's prove them wrong.